Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast. I am here tonight to cover the Rowdies like we usually do, and I'm here tonight with my usual co-host Carlos to do that. We have another win in the books, so I'm feeling good. Carlos, I don't know about you, but things are still looking all right at the moment.
James, we are still undefeated. We are the last undefeated team in the United Soccer League. We are the last undefeated team in American soccer, to my understanding, unless there's like a random like adult league that we consider the 6th division somewhere in like Alaska. They might be 5-0 or 6-0 or something, but the Rowdies still are pretty good at soccer.
Please write in.
Yeah. If anybody's tuning in from Anchorage and follows the 6th division over there or something, let me know. But it feels pretty good. It's nice. I mean, it's. We'll talk about the table in a minute, but it's great to be in first place with one, and in the case of our Western Conference rivals at the top of the league over there, 2 games in hand. Like, it's pretty sweet spot to be in this early on in the year. Obviously, still early, plenty of soccer left to play. But it's hard not to be excited. 7 games into the year, 8 if you count that Jägermeister Cup game against Sarasota. So I'm feeling good, James. It's warm in DC again. It's lovely. It's beautiful. The sun is out. It's blue skies, and I'm in one piece. How's it going over there, James?
It's all right. It is, I guess, not quite the same weather-wise, but everybody, I'm sure, is enjoying the weather that we've got going on down here. So the caveat to that is this past weekend, I guess, which is a good enough segue into the game that we're going to talk about. There was a fire within probably walking distance of the stadium. And this was attached to the USF St. Pete campus. I believe it was a laboratory that actually caught on fire there. And you could see the plume of smoke from the crowd. So that was just an interesting little tidbit. I have a picture of that to save for the future. But anybody who was there, you know what I'm talking about. And if you saw it on the broadcast, hopefully you got to see just kind of an eerie look about the game. But other than that, obviously the result was very nice.
It looked super spooky on TV and on the social media. It kind of gave like a movie-like backdrop, which was interesting. Nonetheless, the game was played. There was like green fire at some point coming out of the building, which I assume had to do with the chemicals in the lab, or maybe the fire rooting for the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
Maybe.
Either way, the game was played, and we can talk about it in a second. So super weird, super creepy, super ominous backdrop on what looked like an already like gray day, if I'm not mistaken, from here. But anyway, we played soccer. Still.
It's fair to say that it was a gray day. So we'll leave aside the weather and actually get into the game here. But it was actually a weird little factor that happened. So getting into the game, obviously we did beat Indy 1-0. It was a slog at times, but we'll get into all of that in a little bit. And now we take on Rhode Island. There is a preview for that coming up. And finally, the last thing that I did want to hit on, later on in the show, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but the Players Association has finally come to an agreement on terms with the league overall, and I believe at this point they should be moving forward with a collective bargaining agreement for the next couple of seasons. We're going to talk about what that looks like. Some things obviously are better. I mean, everything is better, but you're still going to, I think there will still be people who hear that and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. So stay tuned for all of that. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube and any major podcast platform. And of course, please follow on all of us at all your social medias. And we are at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, everywhere else. Let's get into the quick recap here, and then we'll move on to our questions. The starting 11 had Jamali Waite in net, Dion Akoff, Brian Schaefer, Nathan Dos Santos, and Sebastian Cruz across the back. Lewis Hilton and Max Schneider behind MD Myers, Mattheus Oliveira, and Russell Cicerone, and Carson Henderlong kind of also involved there. But the starting 11 was interesting here. And I think that Sebastian Cruz playing in the back line also, one more thing to note. Charlie Ostrom has, I think, come on as a substitute now in 2 games, and Dion Akoff only 1. Hilton and Schneider back in the starting 11, also positive to see. In our standings update, following this 1-0 win, Mattheus's first goal to get that 1-0 win, we are back in first overall in the league with 1 and 2 games in hand. I'll tell you exactly what that means in 2 seconds. But in the Eastern Conference, the Rowdies have 17 points. Lou City has 16 points, and they have played 1 game more. Detroit City and the Battery have 13 points. Miami have 12, and then there are 2 teams behind them on 10 points. Out west, San Antonio sit on 16 points, and they have played 2 games more, hence our 1 and 2 games in hand. Orange County have 15 points, El Paso 13, Oakland also 13, Sacramento also 13, and Phoenix sit on 12. Quickly, I will go through our standings. Eureka still leads the way. Our producer has 13 points. Our writer Connor has 9, Carlos has 8, I have 7, and our other writer Parker has 6. So that is how it breaks down for us. I am
very close.
Interested to see how it turns out there, because obviously I do not want to end in last and have to do whatever Eureka is cooking up for us for the end of the season predictions game here. So Carlos, let's start now with the questions overall. I felt Indy did not threaten us very much. That doesn't mean they didn't threaten us at all, but they didn't threaten us very much. At the other end, though, I don't think we had a ton of chances in this game either. So I wanted to get your overall take for how this game looked going both ways, and kind of, I guess, how the Rowdies shaped up against Indy 11 and their game plan to shut us down.
Yeah, James, this was an interesting one. You mentioned the lineup was a little bit different than what we've seen in the past couple games. But that's also been the theme of every game, that the lineup's been a little bit different than the week before. This one was particularly unique, though, because it seemed like we took off a couple players that had been kind of like surefire starters in this rotation of a lineup we've seen in the last 8 games. Dolabella's gotten a ton of minutes. Micheletto's gotten a ton of minutes. But they actually started on the bench in this one, which was unique to this game in particular. Mattheus Oliveira got a start. You mentioned him getting a start in this one. I believe this is his first start in his 5 games. I'm almost positive of that. I have to fact check myself really quickly. Actually, I take it back. I think, versus Sarasota as well. So his first league start. His appearances with the Rowdies. Played well enough against Sarasota to merit the start, and we've talked about him before in his appearances when he's come in off the bench, how good he's looked, and I really like the way you described him the first time we talked about him, how elegant he's looked on the ball. He just looks comfortable, right? He looks like he is a veteran, Brazilian player, which he is. He's 31 years old, played all over the world, and brings a ton of experience to this club. And he looks like it, right? He just looks comfortable on the ball. I think this was a game where he looked like that. Obviously, he got the game-winning goal in the 53rd minute, which was just an absolute beauty of a shot in the 53rd minute. Great play from Cicerone to get in off the wing and just make his way to the box. So it was just beautiful from him. The other unique change was Henderlong getting the start. After his performance against Sarasota, I don't think that was a bad idea. No. He probably deserved. Honestly, I didn't think we'd see him get a start. I thought we'd see him get some, 30 minutes off the bench, just maybe more so than we've seen him get off the bench in the past. But I like that he got the start. I think it's fair, especially after how well he played against Sarasota. Totally fair to see him get a start here. Obviously didn't get the goal he probably would have wanted, but I think as a whole, the team was maybe a little bit slower offensively than we've seen in past games. So I wouldn't necessarily throw that all on him or really anybody in particular in this one. But those were the most standout changes, I think. Mattheus Oliveira and Carson Henderlong getting starts. You mentioned Cruz starting at left back. We know him to be more of a right back. And when Ostrom came in at the start of the second half, that's where we saw him. Dion Akoff comes off. Cruz slots in on that right side, switches sides. and Ostrom goes to where Cruz was on the left. Pretty easy sub to make. I like that we have like that dynamic ability to rest guys, and maybe we've talked about Akoff being 34, and maybe that plays a factor in that, but he still looks like prime in the minutes he's in. So not really a concern, but certainly nice to that's my dad in the comments. That's funny. Shout out my dad. I like having that dynamic ability to slot guys in and make these adjustments at halftime. So those were the most unique changes to the lineup. Leave it up to the fans, you and me, Coach Dominic Casciato, to judge if it was successful, these changes. We won the game, so in that sense, successful, right? But just maybe a little bit slower offensively than we've seen in the past few games. So I don't know. Maybe it's just this particular combination didn't produce the exciting soccer we've seen in that first half in particular. It was a little bit sluggish. But again, I'm not complaining when we looked probably as slow as we have offensively. Kind of like that game, even in the game against Jacksonville, though. I mean, we had chances. Like, this just felt like a slow game offensively for us, right? And still, we found the goal. Mattheus Oliver had the beautiful finish, great chances. So I can't complain too much, to be honest. I think there's a ton of room to continue building.
Sure. Right?
It feels like Dominic Casciato is still experimenting a little bit. I don't know if we're ever going to like settle down on like a surefire starting 11, though. It just seems kind of like the identity
that way.
Yeah, it's by design, right? That's who he is. That's what we've talked about, like the utility of all these different players. So yeah, like I think that's kind of where we're at. I think that's generally a good thing. There's probably somebody out there with a philosophy that like you should have a identity, a starting 11 that kind of like clear and is going to produce all the winning results for you. But if this continues to work and get us the results we need, I'm not super concerned. And we're just talking about the offensive side of things. By the way, you mentioned that Indy didn't have a ton of dangerous opportunities. I can really only think about their header at the very end of the game as like a really clear look. And Jamali had to make a big save, one hand, near post off of that free kick. I can't remember who actually got on the end of the header for Indy. But in stoppage time to keep the 1-0 win. Other than that, there wasn't really a point in this game where I was like, oh shoot, Indy's definitely going to score on us, or Indy looks really, really good, or whatever. Right. We talked about Noble Okello being like the scary factor for me last week because he's just a large dude. He's 6'4", and our backline isn't really constructed to play that kind of game. Brian Schaefer is our biggest dude back there, but still I think a little bit smaller than that, so had to kind of be on him physically. But he never really found the ball in this game, so at least in a position where he'd be dangerous, right, on those headers. So that's the high level overview. I think the summary is we won. My favorite stat recently when we've been talking about these recaps has been the shots inside the opponent's box. We had 11 in this game. This is the FOTMob stats of shots inside the box. There is a touches in the opposition box, which is 19. I think that's actually right. I think that's the number I've been referring to in the past. 19 touches in the opposition box. Indy actually had more than us in this game. In every game we've played, it's been the reverse, with the exception of the Charleston game. Indy actually had 24 touches in our box versus our 19 in theirs. Again, not that led to a ton of opportunities, but I think when you have the significant gap in that stat that we've seen against past opponents this season, it's led to kind of an indication of who's controlling the game, who's controlling the tempo, who's controlling the offense, right? In this game, it was pretty split, but not in the sense that Indy had the slight edge, but it didn't really result in a ton of, or really any dangerous opportunities. That's my spiel. Thoughts on the lineup, thoughts on the kind of sluggish offense? What are your reactions?
Yeah, I think that what we've seen from the Rowdies so far obviously has been Dominic Casciato trying to get his imprint on this team, and everybody, a lot of the players are roughly familiar with this or at least with his demands. Maybe not necessarily exactly what he's trying to do with this new team, to be fair. But he obviously has worked with a lot of the guys before. I think that the Rowdies will get down the wing and cross the ball back at times. There was a chance in the first half when Dion Akoff got one of those off. But I think that even more than that, the Rowdies do try to find ways to beat teams without necessarily, getting across into the box and getting a header. Again, we will do that, obviously. I think at least one of Carson Henderlong's goals against Sarasota was like that. I don't remember offhand. But the other thing is that you don't see Charlie Ostrom hugging the absolute end of where the opposition defensive line is, waiting for a ball to come that he can push past them and then beat the other team down the line and cross the ball back. He will interact with the players. He will interact with the players around him, whoever they are, to try and get some buildup and kind of make a triangle or some type of numbers overload in areas out on the left. And obviously, whoever's out on the right, it was Sebastian Cruz on the left and then Charlie Ostrom on the left, but then it was Dion Akoff on the right and Sebastian Cruz on the right in this game. So, they are obviously interacting with those players in those positions to try and build up there and break teams down. And I think that the goal that we saw, especially, this was one of the ways that you could look at this. There was a ball out wide, but instead of getting across, the Rowdies player, I think it was Cicerone who got the assist, he cut back and he found Mattheus Oliveira roughly around the penalty spot, I think a little bit in front of it possibly, but his perfect first touch obviously set him up, and that was the goal there. So very positive play in that moment. But the other side is that I think Indy 11 did a relatively successful job here of clogging up the middle of the field. It's not the midfield, but the middle of the field, where we might be looking to get a lot of these chances. Mattheus Oliveira, as a left footer, he's able to interact with the guys on the left. And I think that he also did this with the guys on the right. That is his role, or whoever's role is the attacking midfielder. But you've seen how many players have played wide or higher or in the middle in all of these different positions. Marco Micheletto has been in the middle and out wide. Pedro Dolabella has been up top or in the middle.
And out wide at for 10 minutes.
MD Myers in this one. Cicerone has started, I think, every game so far. So, these are players who have the ability to not just get down the wing again and cross the ball, but they are also looking to play with the ball and keep it on the ground at times, try and pass and build up with enough numbers that Indy, in this case, doesn't have really an option to defend everybody that we have in this little area. But, of course, like I said, that doesn't always work out. And I think Indy actually did a relatively good job here. Their defensive midfield, especially, would have played a big role, obviously, in kind of clogging up those areas and those lanes, those passing lanes that we were trying to operate in. I saw this as well against Sarasota, the way that our players would try to build up down the wing. And obviously we had, I think, a little bit more success there. We had a couple more chances than our 2-0 scoreline suggested. This one, Indy probably had a bit better of an idea of how to defend against this. And with all due respect, or not, whatever, I guess, but probably better players at their disposal as well. So Indy was able to do a better job defensively and prevent us from getting into the good positions. But eventually, we also put ourselves. We might have got more than one goal out of this one, but Indy 11 also didn't get their good chances. They didn't really get much out of that. So I would say, Carlos, I think a 1-0 scoreline is about fair for this one. And I do think that the Rowdies created enough to eventually put one of those in the net. Now we did. That it's supposed to sound, I guess, more profound than just we ultimately did get the goal. But
that's what it's about sometimes. I mean, if you keep doing what you're doing and what's worked throughout the year, eventually it's going to fall against most teams at this level.
That's right.
We have the talent to kind of just play until that goal comes. We saw it be patient in some sense, right? We saw that against Sporting Jacks, but that really late goal, with the talent that's on this team and how the results that have been proven early on, right? We'll get the big tests coming up, right? There's gonna be a big road trip coming up here,
Yep.
including an away game to Louisville at the end of the month. Like, we'll get the big tests, and we'll continue to kind of see how we match up against the tier one in this league, right? But for the most part, doing what's been working is going to break down any team in this league generally, right? So that's what it comes down to sometimes, right? Just it's going to score eventually. Like we skipped over in our quick recap the goal that Hender Long certainly could have had, right? It was actually, I think MD Myers gets the ball kind of close to half field, plays a beautiful ball out wide to Dion Akoff. Akoff whips it in beautifully. Hender Long gets on the end of the ball. Indy 11 keeper forced to make a huge save, reaction save. That one should have been 1-0, right? So, like, I think 1-0, maybe 2-0 is probably the fair score based on what you were saying. It certainly wasn't a dominant performance, but like you said, we did everything we needed to get 3 points.
Yeah. There is an adage in soccer, and adages are something that maybe they just run into being a cliche after a while, but also you say them so often because you have so many instances of this being the case. And the Rowdies, I think, are a very good team in the USL Championship in the 2026 season. So the adage is good teams find a way to win even when they're not playing well. I think we said this a fair couple of times under the Neil Collins era, especially. And this might have been one of those games. This might have been one of those games where the passes weren't connecting necessarily in all the best places, and Indy 11 at the same time was doing well to defend and put themselves in the right positions to block all of those passes, to slow us down, to make sure that we can't really play the game that we want to play. But we kept at it. We kept our patience. We also kept them out of the net at the same time, so we weren't under the pressure that comes with having to get back into the game, and it worked out for us. So I do think that is applicable here. I really like that. Even if the game wasn't the most inspiring you'll ever see the Rowdies play this season or ever in your life, this is still a good result for us. Obviously, 3 points is 3 points.
Yeah,
everybody needs to remember we got these 3 points, and that put us right back at the top of the table again, with 1 game in hand over Louisville City, 2 games in hand over San Antonio. Yeah, that's a pretty good place to be this early in the season. Yeah,
it's kind of ridiculous. A much welcome change from last year. Looking at the YouTube comments, which, by the way, if you're watching this live, always welcome everybody's feedback, everybody's thoughts on the game. My cousin already threw in a score prediction in the YouTube comment section for the game against Rhode Island. My dad was very vocal about his in the YouTube section about his criticisms with the strikers last year. He wasn't a big fan of Women's Vasillas and Artiaga's sluggish play style sometimes, but not that they had a huge impact on this game, right? Your MD Myers is your Carson Hender Longs. Do we count Cicerone as a striker? Not really. He's been more out on the wing.
He has been recently, yeah.
Conway is also technically a striker, but he's been more out on the wing too. Not that so. Point is not that Hender Long or Myers had the biggest contributions in this game, but he, as well as I'm sure the rest of the Rowdies fan base, have been much more happy, much happier about the offensive production early on so far.
Yes.
So that's the game against oh my God, who did you play? Indy. Closing thoughts, James? Feel pretty good?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate again, we spoke with Dominic Casciato after the game, and I don't want to give away anything that was on the record, but he seemed a little frustrated, I'll say, with the way that things went. And but still, everything's a learning experience, as they say, and the team will be able to take heart from the fact, in this case, they still didn't they probably didn't have the best game that they ever wanted to have. And at the same time, they did get the result that they aimed for. And they got the 3 points on the board, on the table, moved themselves right back up to the top. So
Yeah.
you can't ask for too much more than that under those circumstances, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, the reason why we're jumping over Louisville with our game in hand is because they dropped a game this weekend to Detroit City, 2-1, which was an interesting game. Detroit is an interesting team as well. I think they're going to be pretty good by the time.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. It feels like a top 5 or 6 team pretty easily. So not a game that if you're the Louisville City fan, you're like distraught about losing necessarily. But Louisville's kind of been a team that you just are accustomed to seeing with like a green or maybe at worst like a gray color where their score is, right? Like they win most times they play. It feels like they draw every once in a while. So when they get that, occasional loss, it's kind of it's fun. It's fun as a fan of every other team to enjoy that. So they picked up their second loss of the year. Rowdies hop into first place with a somewhat of a sluggish game on a weird night at Al Lang with the fire in the background and not an incredible crowd by any means in terms of just straight up attendance. I continue to applaud the supporter sections who have filled in nicely for feels like every home game and been providing a good atmosphere down there close to the goal, which is the most important part. If we're going to fill up any part of the stadium, that's the area I'd like to see filled up every game. So good on them. But continue on to the games. 4,821 people is not, I think, where the Rowdies should be. Crowd-wise, one of the biggest teams in this league. They're still undefeated. They're top of the table. Go out, get your tickets. No reason to not show up to the next home game later this month against Phoenix Rising. That's my plug for them. I don't work for the Rowdies, but I wouldn't say no if they sponsored or if they sent me some money or something. I don't know. Send me a free jersey. May 23rd against Phoenix Rising. That's your next home game. Between now and then, there's 3 away games in a row. 2 league games and 1 cup game against Miami. So go out, get your tickets. I also saw this, but this is me going on a tangent, not necessarily about this game, but I'll include this before we do our man of the match and wrap up the recap here. I saw Jeff at Anella on Facebook post about just getting the word out there, doing his part in his new role with the Rowdies, trying to get the word out there of kind of the Rowdies story this season, just collectively, like where the club is, first place, the circumstances in which they've gotten there, entirely new team, essentially a new coach, right, who came in halfway through the year last year. Tons of interesting storylines here with the World Cup coming along, right? Like people I think want to get more into soccer. And I tweeted out just tagging like all the Tampa like sports reporters I can think of off the top of my head, including Jeff's post on Facebook. I don't mind being like, folks' main source of Rowdies content. But man, James, I think this team deserves a lot more excitement around the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah.
I think we're in a place where we're not really, I'm not going to say this is 100% the best team in the league, no doubt, but I'm not going to say that it's not one of the top 5 teams, like without a doubt. You know what I mean? It's exciting. It's undefeated soccer. They play generally really exciting soccer at home. So people should be there. And I think as a club, as a community, we need the support of these local media outlets to really get the word out there to the casual fan that's maybe hasn't been to a Rowdies game in 5 years or doesn't know that the Rowdies are undefeated, right? I don't know. Not that those folks would be coming across this podcast, but if you're listening to this, it's always good to tag your local, I don't know, WFLA or WTSP sports reporter on the Tampa Bay Rowdies post and tell them that you want to see more Rowdies coverage. So do your part, help get the word out there, spread the green and gold gospel, right? I think there's a ton of fascinating stories in this Rowdies team, and it deserves more coverage. So do your part, and let's build on the continued momentum of this team on the field and build some momentum in the stands.
I like that.
Okay. James, anything else before we jump into our man of the match for this game against Indy?
I think that we've done most of what we can here.
Beautiful. I'll let you lead off. Who do you got as your man of the match?
Yes, my man in the match for this one. I have done this previously, and actually, this same person benefited under those circumstances. So I guess I'm just going to keep doing it, at least for now. Other players, I'm sure, will supersede this in the future. But when somebody has double digit defensive contributions, I am generally looking at them to be my man of the match. And thus, I have chosen Brian Schaefer. He is my man of the match with 11 defensive contributions, at least according to FOTMob, right? But, we did get the shutout here. Jamali Waite was another consideration, and he did have two good saves in this one. But yeah, I think Brian Schaefer is a fair choice for this past game against Indy.
Yeah, he was solid. Continues to be one of the revelations of the season. Just fascinating how he stepped in and become just a huge contributor in the back line. And remember, local-ish guy, USF Bull. So fun to have him back in the area. Okay, my man of the match is the easy cop-out, Mattheus Oliveira. Awesome that he has stepped into this team so comfortably, so quickly. He looks like a veteran. He is a veteran, and he's continued to prove it over the last few games. I'm glad he's gotten a couple starts now. I did not know. He was kind of a wild card when we had made that signing pretty late in the offseason. I didn't know what he was going to be. I didn't know if he would actually be a contributor, if he was going to kind of just hang out on the bench for most of the year with how stacked the midfield feels. But he took a starting spot away from either Dolabella or Micheletto in this game and did so in the last two games, right, including the cup game, of course, against Sarasota, but now also in a league game against Indy 11. So certainly, according to Dominic Casciato, has done enough on the field in practice, I would assume, and, of course, in the games to earn that starting spot over two guys that have played really, really good soccer at the beginning of this year. So curious to see how that continues to develop going forward. I'm sure it means for great competition in the training complex, which makes everybody better. So good for him. He's really good at soccer, and he scored a goal. So my man of the match.
There we go. All right. Well, everyone, liking and subscribing is free, but if you think you might need some new threads coming up this year, maybe to wear to a Rowdies game even, you can support our podcast a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com, and then you can shop, I suppose. And you can check out all the designs that we've got going on there. There will be a link in the description, and you can use the promo code COYR for 10% off if you find something that you like there. Again, I say this frequently, but I assume that you will. So please do check it out, and we hope to see you guys in some RBLR gear. I've always got my hat on, obviously, and I've got a couple of other people in my family some RBLR gear. So join them, join myself. See you all there at the games. Carlos, speaking of games, great segue yet again for me. The Rowdies have a game this weekend. They are playing Saturday at 7:30 against Rhode Island FC from Centerville Bank Stadium in Rhode Island. It is a brand new stadium, and it is one that I hope to get to go to someday. But I guess it won't be anytime soon. I won't be able to make this game, unfortunately, but the Rowdies are already up there. So not specifically as we're recording. Their form has been mixed recently. Rhode Island are just kind of, they're dropping games that you wouldn't expect based on the other wins that they have earned. They are not the best overall, 8 points from their 7 games, and they just lost at home to Birmingham Legion. However, Carlos, if I'm not mistaken, they have also got some really good results out of the last couple of games too. And so, as I said, it is a little bit confusing to pinpoint exactly where we're supposed to say Rhode Island is. I think that we've been talking about what they look like so far leading into this game, and the RBLR chat, let's say, is we're not all certain about what to expect here.
Yeah, I don't know what this team is. They're weird. You mentioned the kind of funky results, a 3-1 comfortable loss at home against Birmingham Legion, who scored early on them and kind of never looked back. But then 2 weeks ago, they killed Charleston Battery in their home stadium, in Rhode Island's home stadium, where we'll be playing 4-0. All the goals coming in the second half, by the way. A game where they were pretty even on shots, but FOTMob says Rhode Island had the best chances in terms of big chances. They had 5 of them. Charleston had 1. So a weird team. Their lineup didn't really change a ton from that game to their most recent game, also at home against Birmingham. I don't think Birmingham is like a bad team, but I don't think it's a team that's like in the range of Charleston Battery, let's say, right? I think probably in the tier below. Not that the gap is tremendous, but it just doesn't really make sense to me how they go from beating what I think is pretty clearly a better team in Charleston 4-0 and then turning around and losing 3-1 at home. Weird team. They're currently in 10th place in the table, for whatever that's worth. This early on in the season, one win changes that position a lot, right? They could be 10th or they could be 5th, right? Or 6th, right? Depending on just one result going their way, or 12th, right? So I wouldn't take their position on the table as gospel,
Right.
but I don't really know what to take as gospel, if that makes any sense. One thing you can be certain about is JJ Williams probably scoring on us. Every time we've played Rhode Island, this include what? Let me check. Hold on. Yeah, the last 3 times we've played Rhode Island, we've played them 4 times. The last 3 times have all been losses, and they have all been games in which a former Rowdy has scored against us. It was JJ Williams and Zach Arivo in 2024. It was just Zach Arivo May 2025. And then October of 2025, that game that you'll want to erase from your memory because it was just an insane way to kind of wrap up the season on the back end of the year. October 11th, 2025, a 5-0 loss in Rhode Island. JJ Williams scored 2 goals. So you can expect the former Rowdy JJ Williams to get on the score sheet. It just feels like that's kind of the trend in the last 3 games.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And he's still playing good soccer over there. Like he hasn't really lost his touch. Was actually a huge factor in their game against New England Revolution. When that game went to overtime in the Open Cup, he scored the equalizer in the 100th minute, 10th minutes of stoppage time. But again, does that mean they're going to win? I don't really know. Like we said, they just lost 3-1 at home in Birmingham. James, that is a long-winded way of saying I don't know what to expect in this game. Other than that, I'm scared because it's not like we have a huge sample size, but we haven't won in Rhode Island yet. In fact, we've lost the 2 times we've been over there, and both times have been pretty comfortable wins, to say the least, for Rhode Island. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on over there? What's your scouting report been? Who do you know? Who should we keep an eye out for?
Yes, we will go through the most likely starting 11 here, and it is the most likely because they actually have used this for, I think, the last couple of their league games without too many changes. So if there are any changes, then, we're wrong, but at the same time, maybe there was an injury or whatever. This is probably what we're going to see. Koke Vegas is likely to start in net behind Frank Nodarse, Karifa Yao, Hamadi Diop, and Aldair Sanchez. Midfield of Clay Holstead and Hugo Bacharach behind Jojea Quizera, Augustine Rodriguez, and Leo Afonso out wide. As we've said, JJ Williams is likely to start up top. Quizera has 3 goals on the season. JJ and Afonso each have 2. This is in the league play specifically. I will point that out. Rodriguez and JJ have 2 assists so far as well. Augustine Rodriguez, is their biggest chance creator, while JJ is in good form and he's just hit 50 regular season goals in the US in his time in USL. So keep that in mind here. Quizera is their wide player, Augustine Rodriguez, and Leo Afonso is the other wide player out on the left most recently. Leo Afonso is not generally a wide player. I actually remember him from playing at UVA, and then he was drafted into MLS, and he played a little bit for Inter Miami last year. Not a ton, but he was still a part of that team. He would usually come in and play as a striker, so my assumption here is that Aldair Sanchez is going to get up the wing a lot, and Leo Afonso is going to move into the middle of the field. and kind of help out where Agustin Rodriguez might also be in that area, or he might also step out a little bit wide himself, out to the right, that is. I'm assuming that Aldair Sanchez is going to get high as well because he was the left wing back when he played at Sacramento. And obviously that wing back system, they love to just get down the wing. So keep an eye out for that. Jojea Quizera, he may or may not continue to play really out wide, or he might step into the midfield depending on obviously where things are. And Clay Holstad is a midfielder who is kind of a number 8 traditionally. He will not just sit in one position. Hugo Bacharach will be the guy who sits deepest. Clay Holstad is going to get into the attack at times, and he will probably be. We've said this a lot before, but Lewis Hilton, we love when he takes shots from outside the box. Clay Holstad will be a guy who will take shots from outside of the box. He's not afraid to do that. He likes to get up there and try and get involved into the attack. So keep an eye out for that as well. There are a lot of good players here. Agustin Rodriguez, I think this is his first time in the USL. If I'm not mistaken, he comes from Uruguay and a shorter and technical player. So somebody to keep an eye on there.
He's a weird one. I just looked at like where he came from because it was a name I hadn't heard around the USL. Argentinian kid, 22 years old. Spent 4 seasons in Lanús in the top division of Argentina. Accumulated almost 30 appearances across the 4 seasons there. And then randomly had a jump to Cyprus to play in the league over there for a team called Anorthosis. I don't know. And then ended up in Rhode Island. So one of these random players that always seems to kind of creep their way into a USL starting lineup. There's always one or two every season where I'm like, this is a strange one. I don't know where the connection came from. But it looks like he's been okay enough for Rhode Island. So again, 22 years old, comes from Argentina, in a system or at a club that's produced a lot of great young talent in Lanús, and racked up a decent, respectable amount of appearances for having what he would have been. If he's 22 now, 5 years ago, how old is he? 17. Made his first professional appearances. He had 8 of them, 17 years old ish, in 2021. So, kid must be pretty good. And you said he leads in chance creation, right, for Rhode Island?
Yeah.
So we'll have to keep an eye out on him. Maybe he could be one of their breakthrough guys this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised by that based on how things have gone early on. And obviously, his record does lean into that. So those are the players that I would likely keep an eye on. We've talked about JJ Williams. Former Rowdies players love to play against the Rowdies for whatever reason. So I would love
particularly him and Zach Aravo, who, by the way, I forgot Zach Aravo is actually still on Rhode Island. So look for him to come off the bench and score the most beautiful goal you've ever seen against us. Seems how it's been.
I would like for us to maintain this actually pretty good record so far of clean sheets, but we'll see if that's how this plays out. Carlos, I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about how to do our predictions here, so I'm going to let you start it off, and I'm going to try and feel my way into this.
Okay. I think we keep our undefeated streak alive. I am not as confident about going in there and getting a win. Again, don't let Rhode Island's position on the table deceive you. They are a weird team, which also means, I guess, that we could go in there and win by like 5 goals, which would be nice. But I'm going to go with a comfortable 1-1 draw as a safe prediction here. It feels like we're playing really, really great soccer. It feels like we're not making a ton of mistakes that would lead to easy goals for any team. So I think they're going to have to work for it to get their goal. But again, it's just hard for me to count JJ Williams out when he's playing against us in the last few games. When he's been incredible. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. But it does seem like this game could really swing in our favor if they decide to play how they did against Birmingham, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? We've had problems over there in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
It's true.
So I wouldn't say it's an easy place for us to go and get 3 points, even if they are in 10th place or whatever they're at now.
Yeah. So I still don't know where I'm on this one. I'll say our producer Eureka has given us a 1-0 win prediction. Our writer Parker a 2-1 win prediction, and Connor has gone with a 2-2 prediction. All right, it's the moment of truth. I'm gonna have to come up with something. How are we gonna do here? I will say.
While James thinks, if you're in the comments on YouTube or Twitter, drop your prediction too. I want to be able to say. My cousin John predicted 1-0 for the Rowdies in this game, which I love. So shout out to him. James, back to you.
I am not going to go with a loss on this one. I am going to say, I am also going to say a 2-2 draw, I guess. I think that's where I am on this one. 2-2 draw. Yeah, it will be difficult. They have a nice size field is what it looks like from obviously our position, which is just watching it through TV and broadcast, but it is turf. So I do want to point that out as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that 2-2 is fair.
Yeah. I will say one more thing. When you mentioned turf, this Rowdies lineup is a lot younger than our rosters have been in the past. There's a lot of guys that are kind of fresh off college soccer or have played at kind of like the lower end of League One, played all the crappy turf fields and the baseball fields and everything. I feel I'm more comfortable with this particular group than I have in the past, just going to a turf field or like a really weird baseball field, because it seems like, it feels like this roster has kind of run the gamut of crappy fields, particularly with the guys that have come from League One. So just something to note. I don't know, an intangible point here, right? But something that I think I've thought about because of how young this team is and kind of where they come from in the U.S. soccer pyramid, right? A lot of League One guys, a lot of guys that have played college soccer on all the crappy turf fields. So keep that in mind. I feel like that could maybe play to our favor now that we have a younger roster.
Okay. I think that's actually a good thing to point out here. All right. Well, with that, now we do need to move on to our extra time segment because this one is extremely important. Sometimes we get into extra time segments that we just like to throw in there. This one legitimately matters not only for the season, but for this team, for the players, what have you. So the USL Players Association and the league have come to an agreement, a tentative agreement as far as I'm aware, on the next CBA. This is important for us. This is the collective bargaining agreement that will effectively allow them to continue playing. We've seen obviously a lot of protests from the players. There were a lot of clubs across the league or a lot of fans, I should say, across the league who are trying to get their clubs to support the players here. They have made movements, and ultimately there are better lines of agreements than there were previously, but I do want to say that some of these still are very basic. So I'm going to go through this, and this is as reported by Soccer America, part of their article related to the USL Players Association agreement with the league here. So USL Championship compensation. Standard minimum compensation for players in the USL Championship beginning at $42,000 for 12-month contracts. That's up from $31,000 for 10-month contracts, so that's very positive. At the same time, I do want everyone to think about what $42,000 a year is like. It's not the easiest, especially under these circumstances right now. Everybody knows what we're dealing with, inflation from the last couple of years and what we're dealing with right now. Gas is killing me personally, but that's just something I wanted to point out.
The 12-month thing, by the way, just to jump in, but going to 12 months guaranteed is a big step in the right direction too. It feels like that was one of the biggest points of contention because of how unique that made negotiating contracts and what it made it super weird for players to figure out what would be livable, right, post their time with one club moving into another club. So anyway, good that there's a guaranteed salary like for the full year now. It feels like that's one of the big wins from the new CBA.
Absolutely agree with that. And I just wanted to point out as well, there in 2027 they will include 4 entry-level contracts hand quotations for anybody who's just listening, entry-level contracts per team, those would be $34,000. Now, presumably, these are designed for younger players who would still be living at home. I would like to point out that the Rowdies don't necessarily have too many of those generally. Alex Rodriguez is on this team right now. Jesse Tita is listed on the team right now. I haven't seen him, I don't think, on the bench yet so far. But we'll see if that comes into play in the future. USL Premier,
by the way, for what that's worth. I think Tito is on the bench against Indy, by the way.
Okay. Well,
at least that's what FOMO says.
Good. I am wrong about that one, and I'm happy to be wrong. USL Premier is launching in 2028 as of right now, and their standard minimum compensation will begin at $67,000, although they will have entry-level contracts at that time too. So just keep that in mind. This is the other big thing. Health insurance. For the first time, teams will have to offer players health insurance as a distinct part of the player's compensation package, salary and housing allowances. So to put all of that into perspective, health insurance is not in the $42,000 compensation package. But I do want to add, housing could be a part of that $42,000. That also makes the $42,000 relatively meager. But again, 12 months positive, better than where it was in the 30s previously. Just things to keep in mind while we're moving forward. The other thing, though, is this health insurance. Every player has to have health insurance. You have to think about that as a fan. They're professional athletes. To not have health insurance as a guaranteed part of your contract seems crazy to us, because obviously injuries are a day-to-day part of your job. It is inevitable as a professional athlete to get injured at some point. You have to deal with this. So I'm happy that this is something that they were able to work out. Soccer America's report does not have anything specifically on one of the other big sticking points between these two sides, which was player rights images and compensation for their rights, for their image rights. So that will go into like games or advertising, anything along those lines. Also, if you are trying to get a Rowdies player's name on the back of your jersey right now, that is something that would go into this. I don't see anything from Soccer America specifically about that, so I don't necessarily have anything to report about what that is supposed to be. But I think that these are, while positive steps, everybody should listen to effectively still how basic this is. You get $42,000 for a 12-month contract, and that could include your housing stipends. You get health insurance now as a separate part, but that seems like a basic thing, especially for professional athletes, in my opinion, and we don't know the image rights at this time. So good stuff, but just keep that in mind moving forward. Anybody who, I don't know if there was anybody in your life that was not necessarily on the side of the players here, but I think you should point that out to them, and maybe they will change their mind relatively quickly. Carlos, do you have anything to say related to the CBA agreement?
No, I mean, you hit the big points. By the way, for what it's worth, you can't get a current Rowdies player like standard name and number on the back of a Rowdies jersey on the bayrepublic.com yet. So I would assume they're still working that out. Not that would be like the first thing that they do if it does get figured out, but I just wanted to check, so I was curious. You only get the Rowdies legend, quote unquote, customization.
So yeah, there we go.
Dalgard, Dubose, Fernandez, Marsh, Rodriguez, Vanderbeck, Wegerle. So interesting. Yeah, I mean, standard stuff, but glad it got worked out, right? Positive. I think it's a win generally. So there were clubs that while we say it's pretty standard stuff, there were clubs that the reason why we're having this discussion at all is because there's a number of clubs that don't meet those pretty basic standards, right? Yeah. So now it's a collective point that everybody has to meet those very basic things. My understanding, we've talked about it before, is that the Rowdies have been pretty good at meeting and hopefully exceeding some of the standard things like health insurance and housing. So I was never personally concerned in the last number of years that the Rowdies have been mistreating players or anything in that sense. But right. I'm glad to know that the rest of the league is also kind of getting on board now, and at least, again, with the basic level stuff. So, yeah, seems like a big enough win to celebrate for the moment and enjoy what will otherwise be now a uninterrupted season of soccer. Doesn't seem like the protests, the strikes are necessarily likely now.
Right.
Resolution. So hopefully, like I said, that means a good rest of the season of uninterrupted soccer, and hopefully a Rowdies championship by the end of the year. Seems like a good initial win for everybody involved.
Yep. And so, as we said, that was something important we wanted to hit on. Thank you, everybody, for indulging us here. But Carlos, do we have anything else? Actually, I see that we might have something else on this on this list here.
Last thing I'll drop in extra time, less important to the league as a whole. But I was watching the Champions League this afternoon, and an Ecuadorian is back in the Champions League final, which is awesome. So shout out to Piero Hincapié to making it there with Arsenal. He had a great game. And tomorrow we could see hopefully another Ecuadorian make it back to the Champions League in William Pacho. So that would be pretty sweet. A little Ecuadorian versus Ecuadorian Champions League final between PSG and Arsenal. Cool. That's everything, James. That is the end of our little podcast. Thank you for listening. Follow us at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere you're on social media and do your doom scrolling. Work us into your limited screen time, which hopefully everybody is trying to reduce. I know I am. Not that I'm really good at like following the time limit set on my phone and not clicking ignore time limit for the day. But if you do that, work us into your social media doom scrolling. At RBLR Sports, like I said, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, everywhere. I'm on Twitter mostly at CarlosGPA10. I've been tweeting, obviously, a ton about Tampa Bay sports as a whole. The Lightning just got knocked out of the playoffs, unfortunately. Tough way to go out. But now that means for me, it's pretty much exclusively Rowdy season with a little bit of baseball on the side. So come follow at CarlosGPA10. We'll talk about Rowdies almost exclusively now, and then the World Cup. We'll have a good time. James, where can folks follow you?
I am also on Twitter at RBLRJamesK. And you can use the hashtag AskRBLR if you'd like to get any points in here. Like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience on YouTube, or if you'd like just to listen to us, not a problem. We are also on the Spotify and iHeartRadio apps. We are on Apple and Google Podcasts. Wherever you are, we are there, and we are able to talk to you guys and tell you what's going on with the Rowdies. So for another win in the books, and hopefully another one coming up, even on the road, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.